Happy Saturday. Welcome to the weekend. This is Father Mark over at Christ Redeemer Catholic Church. I want to do two things for us today in our conversation. First, I want to kind of put a bow and wrap up our conversation this week about choosing to live with hope in our life. Then I want to invite us to look ahead to what we're going to experience at Mass this weekend. As we have been in the waters of hope, as we've talked about how to choose to live with hope in our life. I mentioned yesterday just the importance of memory, and I did that by introducing that it is people in my life that often remind me that I need to remember. When you and I are struggling or suffering, the tendency is for us to isolate ourselves, and that's actually the worst thing that we can possibly do. We isolate ourselves because how we're feeling. We isolate ourselves because of you might say, the lens through which we're looking at life, but we also isolate ourselves because it's tough for us to open up our hearts and to risk rejection from another person, especially when we feel rejected by life or maybe even God. But that's precisely when we need people the most. And if we're going to choose to live with hope, then we need to choose to live in relationship with people who can remind us of who we are as a people of hope. Do you have people in your life who you can count on, who are a rock for you? Do you have people in your life who are there to remind you of the goodness of God? All of us have people in our life. We have relationships with lots of different people, but sometimes we can have our friends that we play with, we can have our friends that we work with, we can have our family members, but if we don't have specific relationships, and it doesn't have to be a bunch of them, but we have to have some, where those people are people who call out the holiness in us, who want us to get to heaven more than we do, you might say. Those people who believe in who we are and who are just sources of wisdom. Do you have those relationships in your life? And again, it doesn't have to be dozens and dozens, but we have to have one or two people who we can lean on when we need it, or who are not going to go away whenever we are trying to isolate ourselves. It's people that are needed in our life to remind us of God's goodness and help us be a people of hope. I also need people in my life if I'm going to be intentional about saying yes to God in the ordinary circumstances of life. In other words, there are times in my life where I don't want to say yes to God, but I need to be intentional about saying yes to God. And when I have good people around me, they help me develop the habit and the strength to be intentional about saying yes. That's what disciples do. Disciples of Jesus Christ learn how to say no to the things that pull us away from God, and they say yes to God in times when they want to say no. That's where we're going this weekend as we conclude our preaching series on discipleship entitled The Way. Last Sunday, we talked about how disciples learn how to say no, and this Sunday, we're going to remind us that disciples need to learn how to say yes, which is going to be a perfect launching into a new series that we're introducing for Lent, which I think is going to be an exciting thing for us and help us all grow a lot. Looking forward to seeing you at Mass. Looking forward to our podcast, a conversation that we're going to introduce tomorrow that's going to kind of get us ready for the journey of Lent. Let's look for those people in our life. Let's see each other at Mass. And until that conversation happens tomorrow, whether it's at church or whether it's through the podcast, God bless you.